This is One on One. Father Edwin Leahy is the headmaster of St. Benedict's Prep in the heart of the great city of Newark. Good to see you, Father Ed.
See you, Steve.
We are on the campus of NJIT, and this is Newark. Is Newark at a crossroads?
That's what they say.
Are we always at a crossroads?
More or less, I think. I think we're always. But Newark is at a crossroads now. We have a transition in the leadership of the city. Lots of difficulties, lots of interest in Newark. But so I think there's no question it's at a type of crossroads.
Let's put St. Benedict's in perspective. We recently did a full half-hour documentary on a film that was done, a wonderful film called The Rule, about St. Benedict's, and log on to our website. You can go check it out. Great stuff. But I got to ask you, for those who don't know St. Benedict's, put it in perspective in terms of the role it plays in this city, particularly for the young men in the city who face such daunting odds.
Well, it's an interesting place, Steve, in that when we began the school again in 1973.
Closed in 1972 for lack of funds.
Diminishing number of students
Right.
following the riots in '67. There was a lot of concern and flight from the school, so it closed in '72 with really no intention of reopening St. Benedict's Prep.
Translation, there weren't enough, there was concern there weren't enough white kids that would be willing to go there.
Well, that's one way to look at it. Yeah, the number of African-American kids was growing.
Right.
And probably 33 to 35% of the 9th and 10th grade were African-American, so it was obviously getting larger, all kinds of stress and difficulty around that. And the sense that it's not the same school because there's so many of them, so to speak.
Non-whites.
But, yeah. So the thing winds up falling in on itself, essentially because of a lack of vision and faith on our part in the monastery, who were responsible for the school. So it closes, and with no real intention of reopening it. And we decided several months later that we were going to try to do something for the sake of the city, and the things that we were best equipped to do was education. So we tried to piece together a school. We wanted to cheat. We wanted to use the history of St. Benedict's Prep, but it wasn't going to be St. Benedict's Prep. And one night at a meeting, early on, it was in the first 18 months probably, a gentleman by the name of Carl Lamb, whose son was a student, both of whom now have died. Young Carl died as a young man, and then his dad died. But his father said to me at a parents' meeting, he said, "Father, I have to ask you a question." I said, "What's that, Mr. Lamb?" He said, "How come it was good enough to be St. Benedict's Prep when it was all of you, and now it's not good enough to be St. Benedict's Prep that it's all of us?"
It was good enough for white kids to be called the Prep, which is a very prestigious term, preparatory school, but not for Black and Latino kids.
That's correct. And
what did that do for you?
St. Benedict had a long history in Newark. What it did for me was I looked at Mr. Lamb and I said, "Whoops." So the next morning it was St. Benedict's Prep. So everybody likes to credit us, the guys in the monastery, and me for reopening St. Benedict's Prep. We never reopened St. Benedict's Prep. Carl Lamb reopened St. Benedict's Prep with that question that night. And I think we learned from that what the best thing we could do for town was to, as they say in some self-help groups, take the cotton out of our ears and stick it in our mouth. In other words, shut up and listen. And people in town kind of taught us how we might be of some service, how we might be able to.
I'm sorry for interrupting, Father. You often talk about providing opportunity for these kids. What opportunity don't they have now that you're trying to provide for them?
Well, the opportunity that we provide them is to allow the talent that they have to emerge. So to give them a place where they can come and to create. The biggest, you talk about Newark at a crossroads, the thing that we've lost in Newark is a sense of community. It's kind of been destroyed in a variety of ways. I think the drug traffic has been part of that.
Gang violence.
A lot of gang violence around drugs has caused the destruction of the sense of community. So what we try to do is to create a sense of community in the middle of the city. If you were to draw a circle around Newark, you'd probably put the compass on our roof. So we're right in the center of it. And to create this place of some hope. But what we do is to try to, in some sense, stay out of the way of the kids. We guide them, we create a structure for them, and then they use their talents to create this community with us. And it's, so far at least, it's worked, I think. And so there's a connection. One of the things that we did post 9/11 we went to a different kind of security on our property. And in order to get on the property, you had to stop at the front desk. You had to get a badge to come on the property. Well, our alumni went out of their mind. They went berserk. What are you talking about? I don't have to go through security to get here. This is mine. So we actually had to design a different kind of badge for the alumni. And they weren't happy about it, but they would accept that in order to come on the property.
Because it's their family. Why am I, if we're family, why am I going through this?
That's correct.
Describe the family.
Everybody feels, I think the kids managed to create this connection with one another around learning, around recreation, around cultural differences and
around leadership, because you put the students in charge of an awful lot, don't you?
They run the school day to day.
They run the school.
They run the school day to day.
Come on, Father, put that in perspective.
The school's divided into 18 groups. Each group has a leader. The groups are grouped into sections. There's 4 sections. Each section has a leader, and then on top of the whole operation is a senior group leader. And those guys run the place day to day. Now, they have somebody that they can access as a coach. As
an adult.
That's correct. Who they work with. So, I mean, really, the rules are, if you're going to make a decision about the place without adult support, you had better be right. Because ultimately, the parents or alumni or somebody, they're not going to go after the 18-year-old senior group leader. They're going to come after me. So you can do it without adult advice, but you better have it. You better knock it out of the park. And usually the kids will get advice before they make major decisions. But you can have a meeting after school called by an 18-year-old senior group leader, and the whole place will be there. So it's...
they make decisions about how to deal with discipline. Kids steal something, they deal with that kid. You don't, and your colleagues, the adults don't. Those kids deal with that kid, correct?
Yeah, we'll get the complaints, and we'll go to the kids, the leadership team, and say, this is what's going on. What are we going to do about it? And they'll go to work on it. But we don't lock anything, right? There's no locks on anything. No, there's no
in
locks
Newark. So here's the interesting thing. As we watched the movie, The Rule, one of the things that really struck me was there's a lot of talk about what a lot of these kids face. For those who don't understand or can't appreciate what some of these kids face, a disproportionate number of the young men face. By the way, you know this, we've talked about this many times. The Catholic high school that I attended, Essex Catholic High School at the time, Broadway in Newark, a very rough neighborhood, as you know, closed after. Benedict's closed while I was there. Our school closed for good, never opened up again. It's not an unfamiliar story. Your place stays open. I remember for us, a lot of those kids, particularly African American, Latino kids, they struggled, but that was in the late 70s. You know, you're talking about a different kind of struggle now, aren't you?
Yes.
What are they facing?
Well, most kids now. I think the problems of urban education have now leaked into the rest of the society. Young men in this country are in huge problem. They're disappearing. They're disappearing in higher education.
Disappearing.
You have to do. Most universities in this country could be filled with qualified women, and so they have to do affirmative action in effect to keep their male population up. It's a big problem in Newark. Even in the best schools, not many people talk about it, but even in the best schools, the best Newark public schools and charter schools, the test scores are driven largely by girls. And the older the kids get at pyramids, the more the girls.
What's going on with
dominate.
the boys?
They're disappearing. They disappear to the streets. They disappear.
You're talking about we're disappearing like it's magic. What are you talking about?
They wind up on the streets. They wind up out of school. It's unbelievable, but it happens. It's a big problem. And women frequently say, wow, you could fill the universities with qualified women. They get excited about that until you stop and think, well, who are you going to live your life with? Who are you going to raise kids with? Who are you going to have reasonable conversations with if you have a PhD and the guys are all, I don't know why.
But how do you take those kids who would otherwise, many of whom be disappearing, and have them functioning as leaders at St. Benedict's Prep?
Well, you give them, number one, somehow they get to St. Benedict's Prep, right? Somehow. Somebody pushes them to St. Benedict's Prep. Somebody. Frequently, people, we used to have a relationship at Morton Street School where the guidance counselor.
Public high school in the city of Newark.
Public elementary school.
Public elementary school,
correct.
sorry.
The guidance counselor would call and say, listen, I've got 6 guys. 2 of them will do fine. 2 of them you're going to have to watch, and 2 of them have to live there. They're going to get killed on the street.
And tell folks, I'm sorry for interrupting, people live there. Kids live there.
Yes, we have a residence hall.
And why do they live there? Is it because that's the only place they can be?
Well, no, it's not the only place they can be, but it's a place where they can focus on the schoolwork and not have to deal with all the distractions that may go on either in their house or in their neighborhood. I mean, lots of kids in the city and beyond the city, Newark, Irvington, East Orange, the problems are more or less the same. Several people that have been killed. You can talk to kids and young kids in the city; they all know somebody that's been killed. So it's to try to study, and when you have all of these competing distractions, and most young men of color deal with tremendous anger at an absent parent or a parent they don't even know.
Violence in the home.
Well, violence in a variety of forms. Yeah, the violence that comes from not having both parents there, absent fathers. Moms try their best, but you get to a certain age when you're trying to separate from your mom, and mom's trying to hang on because she's afraid you're gonna get hurt. It becomes a huge difficulty, and you get this anger wells up inside kids. So if you're trying to do English or history or math, well, you've got this anger. How does the anger manifest itself? You see it a lot of times, and kids are flatlined. They're just depressed. And they just live that way in this state of numbness, you see. So that's huge in Newark. That's why Newark's at a crossroads. Until we address the mental health issues, the emotional health issues of young people, we're going to have difficulties.
By the way, just to make it clear, we got a minute left. Father Ed went to St. Benedict's, was not accepted originally.
Correct.
All right.
Correct. I was rejected.
Did it change your life?
Yeah, the pastor of my church wrote a letter and got me in, and it absolutely changed my life.
As a Catholic, changed my life. I have listen, nothing against the public schools, but I have no idea for some of us what would have happened in Newark if we did not have that option. You love your job after all these years. You were like 25 years old when you took over, right?
I was 26.
You were 26?
26.
You still love it?
Had no idea what I was doing. And yeah, I do. I love it. I love the kids are great. In fact, I was dressed this morning to come here, and one of the kids, he's the youngest kid in the school. He's 11 years old in 7th grade, just been there for a week. He looks at me and said, "Father, you look good." I said, "What's this guy?" 1 week I've known him.
I love it. Listen. Father Ed, I want to thank you for joining us. And if Newark is at a crossroads, I'm glad you're with us, guiding us in the right way.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
It's great. Thanks.
That was good.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato at NJIT has been provided by New Jersey Institute of Technology, Prudential Financial's Global Communications Department, Barnabas Health, TD Bank, Josh S. Weston, the Fidelco Group, and by PSE&G. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.